Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Let's Create Africa, a show where we talk about business innovation, governance, and the SDGs. Today we have Elsie Oyoo, an advocate and secretary, certified secretary, and she'll say more about that. But before we even get into that, I would like to say thank you to our partners and friends who have been able to let us do this, starting with Let's Create Africa, Entrepreneur Support Organization, KYR Africa, which means Know Your Rights Africa, which is a platform to know your civic and civil rights. Also, we have the Future of Work, a platform to just enable you to get job opportunities. And last but not least, our favorite, Statinev, who have been able to be with us all through. Statinev is an innovation ecosystem enabler. Also, I would like to say kudos and shout out to GWC. That's the Give Work Challenge by the Lala Jana Foundation. And the Give Work Challenge is an opportunity for entrepreneurs to actually just be taken through a moment of training through their businesses and just get funding, 4,000 USD of funding after the training for organizations that actually win. So as we proceed, Elsie, how are you?
I'm well, Ahiga. How are you?
Very fine, thank you. Thank you actually for gracing us with your presence. You're a hard
Thank
one
you
to
for the
find.
invitation.
You're a hard one to find, but you finally made time and we're thankful. So very thankful for that. For those who don't know, Elsie Oyoo is an advocate and certified secretary. She's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a certified secretary with over 8 years of experience in providing legal and corporate governance advisory services. She's also served as a venture capital analyst, so she bears a unique perspective on the African venture capital landscape. She's also passionate about helping entrepreneurs succeed. So Elsie, even as we proceed, please, I know I've mentioned a few things about you, but what can you tell us about you that I haven't mentioned?
Well, this is not on the professional front, but I'm really passionate about salsa dancing. So, okay, other than that, basically it's what you've said that I'm a venture. Okay, I have been in venture capital, and that was on the Chicago scene, in the Chicago startup scene. And I'm an advocate of the High Court. So I think it's just a very unique experience that I have. And I hope that when I share it, entrepreneurs and venture capital professionals will benefit in Africa and wherever they're listening from.
Good, good. And what's your history? What actually brought you to where you are right now?
Okay, that's a very interesting one. So in 2019, I decided masomo haijatosha. I had done my LLB, which is my undergraduate studies in law, and I'd done my postgraduate diploma in law. And then I decided I needed to do a master's. But as I had been in the public university system, I wanted to see something to compare it with. So I went to Illinois. That's Urbana-Champaign. So I went to the State University. And there, that's actually where I found this opportunity to enter into venture capital, because I went for an alumni banquet for the Black Law Student Society. Yes, there's a Black Law Student Society. Don't be shocked. And yeah, so
Nothing shocks me anymore after Trump, honestly.
So yeah, so I went and I met one of the other alumni, and that's the interesting thing, and it's maybe probably the first thing to note, that people place a lot of importance in the US on alumni networks. Like, even if I don't know you and you are in the University of Illinois, there's a bond, there's an instant bond. Like, yeah, did you go for the football games? Did you do this? And it's like a starting point for networking and for business. So anyway, I went to that banquet and I told him he did a double degree JD, that's the law degree in the US, and an MBA. And he took the MBA route. So my former boss is Paul Burton, a very, very recognized investor and venture capitalist. And so he started his career in investment banking, and he gave me a chance. He gave me a chance to see their world. And I did that for 2 years, and I'm very grateful for that because it has given me a very unique perspective, something I would never have ever done if I'd not gone to the University of Illinois. So I think that's where my venture capital experience comes from.
And you keep talking about entrepreneurship and what you're passionate about when it comes to helping entrepreneurs. Why is that it? Because for some entrepreneurs, the experience with advocates, and do not quote me, has not been the best because it would be more like you're looking for money rather than helping me actually tackle the challenges, legal challenges that I have in my business. So why do you take the path of really even announcing that this is what I'm doing and I want to help entrepreneurs?
Okay, well, the thing is, this is where the world is going. I don't know if you've read the book Who Moved My Cheese. You
Mhm.
need to move with the cheese. And I think there have been many studies done that show that the legal profession is the most resistant to change, resistant to technology. We're very hierarchical, which
Yes,
serves
ma'am.
its purpose and it's very structured. However, we have to also acknowledge that where the world we are in the 21st century and where the world is going, it's we are where we are because of entrepreneurship. I mean, I'm doing this because someone somewhere came up with the cloud, someone somewhere came up with smartphones and computers and Intel, all those things. Those were all fruits of entrepreneurship. So that's the future. And I think in Africa, Kenya, we have to embrace that. And even things that we use every day, like M-Pesa, that's entrepreneurship, although it was taken up by one of the biggest companies in Kenya, but it started off as an innovation, and entrepreneurship is good with innovation. So that's why I'm passionate about it.
And good that you've mentioned that. How do you see the innovation space in Kenya? We can start with Kenya, East Africa, then Africa as a whole. How has been your experience and how have you seen it? And my second question would be vis-a-vis the global you are in before.
Okay, I would say that the Kenyan, you know, Kenyans are innovative. That's what I'd say. Kenyans are innovative, and there are many things, and probably, I don't know, there are small things that we do that we don't think that are important, but they are. I don't know if you remember, like, science congress in high school. Science
Mhm.
congress in high school, I know there are people who have actually done something from that. But I know, okay, entrepreneurs want the whole, I started off on a different path, and that's good. So Kenyans are innovative, and that's a good thing. Of course, there was a startup bill. I don't think it ever became a law. It didn't become a law. So there are gaps. There are gaps in the sense that we could always make it more enabling. We could make it more enabling because, okay, being a lawyer, I know that there are many bottlenecks. There are many bottlenecks for startups, and sometimes you just have to brave it and do your thing and hope that the law catches up with you at some point. And I think that's probably the way you're gonna go. I'm not saying break the law, don't break the law, but
Mhm.
sometimes you're going to venture into places that there are no actual regulations or laws that govern.
Mhm.
But then you do that, and then you call when they see the good work you're doing, they'll call you to the table, and then you can negotiate with them. And then globally, the thing is, for me, Africa, like when you say talk about the innovation space in Africa, it's very hard for me to generalize 52 countries with very different histories and very different populations, you know. But if I could compare like Kenya with the Chicago startup scene, for example, I would say probably it's the thing of resources, because resources determine a lot. Like, Chicago is not even the biggest startup scene in the US. Of course, we know that's Silicon Valley. But then Chicago, there's still a lot more resource, or there's still a lot more resources in Chicago than in Kenya. And that's one thing. And then of course now if that's where there's a lot of happening, then the exposure, yeah. So we probably would benefit from a bit more, how would I say, we would probably benefit from a bit more networking, with people around the globe, just to know what other people around the globe are doing.
You've mentioned something. You said resources. What exactly does that mean? When you talk about resources, apart from money, what exactly do you mean that they have more resources? What is that exactly?
Okay, well, I was thinking, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
It's okay. It's
Wahiga.
okay.
I was thinking principally about money, actually, in the sense that, but okay, there are other resources, but money is key, yeah.
Yes,
Because there are
capital.
always these events happening around. There are always these events happening around Chicago, like, for example, the universities support startups very much, yeah. So there are always these competitions within the universities, like the University of Chicago, Notre, excuse me. Okay, Notre Dame is not in Chicago, but it's in a neighboring state. But let's say Notre
Mhm.
Dame, Northwestern, all the big universities, they have like a hub, and they have these, yeah, well, you'd call them incubators. I know we have a couple in Kenya, but
Mhm.
I'm telling you, there's no university worth its salt in the US that does not have an incubator or something, an accelerator, something that's going to help entrepreneurs, or even a research lab. Because, it's not only about tech, entrepreneurship
Mhm.
in tech, it's also entrepreneurship in things like pharmaceuticals, which would really help Kenya. And actually, I was in pharmaceuticals, I was in biotech and digital health, because we have many diseases that we are always like, oh, why have they never found a cure for AIDS, or why have they never found a cure for this and
Mhm.
that. But those are I mean, they are endemic to us, or at least that's what people think. So it would be really useful if there were very strong and well supported research labs that would then, because then what's the channel? I mean, what's the funnel? The funnel is always, you research into things. I mean, these professors, and they have assistants, they do that. And then maybe they're interested in only being professors and researchers. So they sell their patent, they sell the patent, or they give it to the university. And then the university looks for venture capitalists who want to buy these patents, like, cheaply, and commercialize them. And that's another way. And so if they actually find a way to make it something that the market can take in, that's what they do up to a certain point. And then the what are they called? Then the big pharma now come in, because the big pharma are too, not scared, but they're risk averse. They wouldn't wanna start publicizing that they're involved in a drug that doesn't have any approvals. So the
Mhm.
venture capitalists take that risk. And so I don't know, okay, maybe I'm going on and on, but for me,
No,
that's a
no.
big difference between.
Interesting, interesting. And having come back, how long did you come back actually?
Sorry?
How long has it been since you came back?
Oh, I came back in 2020 in the height of COVID. So it's been
Oh.
about 2 years. Three, in fact, now it's like we're going on 3 years now. We're
Mhm.
going on 3 years.
So, what have you seen can be something apart from introducing incubators and accelerators within the tertiary institutions? What else can you say is something we should be keen on borrowing? Um you've already mentioned policy, and that's pretty good. I'll actually come up to your opinion about the startup bill. But what do you think are some of the other aspects that we should borrow, not only as a country but as a continent?
Well, okay, so I've mentioned thing of policy, like enabling. It doesn't have to be a single startup bill, but it
Mm.
has to be. In fact, I think America has succeeded because, okay, well, for FDA things, we know that they're highly regulated. But like for startups, you just kind of start. You start somehow. I don't know if I've read. Yeah, you start somehow. You start how you can. I've read not Bill Gates. What's his name? Oh gosh, there would be so much if I knowing that I've confused their two names. Steve Jobs' book, and how he started up in his parents' garage. And
Mm.
then, I mean, there was really very little. And then they were like 18 and they registered their company and they moved on. So, yeah, definitely the policy. And then also, I think the culture would be very important in the sense of, okay, I would say that even I am guilty of this. Sometimes when I hear like one of my younger nieces or nephews or cousins, they
Mhm.
say, "I've quit my job to start a startup." I'm like, "Oh no, this is doom." Yeah, someone is gonna be like, I don't know how this is going to end. Yeah. So it's normally very scary for us, I guess, because we're in a developing country.
Mm,
But then I guess also it's because there's no social support for that. Okay, social support. I'm not talking about your family. I mean, please, jitegeme, but in the sense of um, like the government, what has it put in place? I guess Tattoo City is a good start. Not Tattoo City, what is it called? The Silicon Savannah, yeah,
mhm.
that is a good start, but we need to see more of that. We need, because even government funding is a legitimate source of funding for startups, and it needs to be
Most
something
definitely.
real. It doesn't even have to be in cash. It can be in kind. It's just, may think, if our leaders, or okay, well, this is not like hitting out at our leaders, but if everyone in Kenya did what they were supposed to do, because like if your Wi-Fi worked well from home, then you wouldn't have to go to the office. Then your home could be an office. Then you don't have to rent. You get.
Yep.
So if every small thing works out, so I just think it's just creating that enabling environment. I'm not scared I'm going to die, because let's just try to move from Maslow's basic needs of food, clothing, shelter, and then
Mhm.
now we can be self-actualizing. Because if we're at the basic needs of, okay, I have to be chonjo because someone might steal my wallet right now, the landlord might lock me out of the house, then you're not going to be innovating anything. You're just going to be trying to survive. So what we need to do is just create an enabling environment for startups.
Very interesting. What are, and maybe, actually, before I go to that, startup bill, what are your thoughts about the startup bill?
My ideas about the startup bill, I think it's good in itself. It's good in itself. What I wouldn't want is for it to already replicate the things that are already in other laws.
Mhm.
So I hope that if it's ever passed, when it's passed, it's actually going to add value. That's what I need. I mean, because sometimes people can just pass a bill because they wanted to be seen to be working in parliament.
Yeah.
I hope that it's going to actually make a change, and a change for the positive. And because sometimes, and I think I read that bill a while back, so my memory of it is not too. I think it was even 2020 or 2021, yeah. So I read that bill, and I think what I got from it is that I remember my impression was that I just hope that this bill is not creating an extra layer of regulation
Hmm.
for startups. Because if you look at the Companies Act does have provisions for small companies
Mhm.
and things like those. So what we just need is that enabling environment. And if that's what the startup bill is coming to do, then let it do that, but not like now extra regulations. And I think there was like a thing, sorry, like a thing, me, a whole lawyer saying like a thing, a section
I
talking
understand.
about a section talking about there'll be a register of startups, then there'll be, a register of startups. And I thought, oh my God, that means after you go and register your company at companies registry or BRS, then have to go and qualify for this other list, and you have to go and qualify for that other list. So I felt like at a point it was adding a layer of regulation, and we just need to cut back. Kenya is one of the most regulated countries in the world. We have more
Mhm.
laws, like even about corruption. We have more laws about corruption than most other people. So laws are not our problem. Our problem is implementation. If we just had one law and we could implement it, that would just be awesome.
Implementation. So moving on, good. What are the key trends in venture funding in Africa, especially in 2023? Because now we are, for lack of a better way to put it, we are post-COVID. So
Yeah.
most capitalists and people who want to help organizations still are like, we are already post-COVID, so we are no longer giving random free grants or random money just to keep you alive. We need to see results. So what have you seen as the key trend in 2023, and moving forward, what do you see as the key trend in venture funding in Africa?
Okay, so first, a clarification. Like, would I consider grants venture funding? I wouldn't really, but okay, some people might. So venture funding is never free. It's not, I mean, it's free money in the sense that they give, but it's never free because
It's
they
never
want
free.
equity. When they give you
Mm,
venture funding, they want equity.
mhm,
And equity, 10% of your company, when you've made it, like 10% of Facebook, that's a lot.
mm,
Yeah. So that's the first thing. And just very quickly, the trend that I've noticed this year is that there's been a big drop in venture funding in Africa, which is very worrying. Because even before, okay, even like 2021, 2022, people were saying there's a big rise. There 133% rise from figures in 2014. It was still a very small drop in the ocean because like now in the at its highest point, like in 2022, venture funding in Africa was 3.5 B. Yeah. But then it's like it's hundreds of billions around the world. Like venture capital as a whole is hundreds of billions. So
mm.
this 3.5 B we are happy about. And then now even that has reduced. It just shows, for me, it just shows that Africa is still getting a very small bite of the cake. It's still it's marginally, I would say venture funding in Africa is marginal compared to what the global venture capital is.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's
What
the
does
sad truth.
no, that's good. So what exactly does that mean for entrepreneurs right now? Apart from the usual Kenyan vibe for, oh my God, another cousin who has chosen to go into entrepreneurship, which will fail. Apart from that, what then? Where do you think entrepreneurs should be in? What spaces? How do you think they should operate? What are the thoughts around? Should even companies be trying to go looking for funding, venture funding specifically?
What I would say is that, look, it just means that there are there are other things that are vying for the funding of venture capitalists other than startups, right? Because
Mm,
why do venture capitalists put money in startups? Because they like the returns. Okay, in fact, they say, like, very traditional venture capital firms, like if you put your money in 100 startups, 90 will fail, or 95, but you'll probably, if you're lucky, five will succeed and one will be a unicorn. I mean, the figures are not good. So to some extent, it's like it's very risky. It's very risky, but you know what they say: high risk, high return.
mm,
So for Africans and for Kenyans in particular, you just need to know that there's competition for that money you want. It's not like it's just lying in someone's mattress or in someone's bank account.
mhm.
Um, there's an opportunity cost. So when you're looking for funding, you need to make a very good case. And even when you're starting out from the very beginning, you need to know that there's no money to give away. This person is in it for the profit. And therefore, if I make a compelling case that I will be able to return this money, then he or she or they will give that money. But if I can't make a compelling case for why this funding should be put in my venture or should be put in my startup, then I can't. And that now goes to the whole issue of, for example, how do I connect with the people who have the money? Because it's evident that we are in Africa, we're many, but most venture capitalists are not African or they're not from Africa.
You've actually gone into my next question. So, how do you deal with that problem? The problem where most of our venture capital is coming from outside the globe, or rather outside the continent. Sorry. Um, what do you think are the changes that we need to make as not only African entrepreneurs but African investors and also African capitalists, Afro capitalists, in other words?
Well, I would say have a bit more faith in your people. That's for me. That, like, I would say that for African venture capitalists, have a bit more faith in your people. But the truth is that there are not that many African venture capitalists. Though I've been happy to read about a couple here and there Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would also say create forums, because create forums where you can actually get in the same, in fact, that's the word, get in the same room with the people who have the money that they can give you. Create a forum. And sometimes it's not so easy to create that forum. You're not going to just write to them on LinkedIn and they will respond. It's not going to be that easy. Yeah. So creating, what does it mean to create that forum? And well, unfortunately or fortunately, it means, for example, what I saw us doing in the venture capital firm we were in, because we did both. We would invest in startups, and we were also a startup looking for investment. And so when we were looking for investors, we would go for conferences like, and you have to go for specific conferences, sector specific conferences. So if you're in biotech, go for the most famous biotech conference. And I know it's a big ask. It's not cheap. It's like, I don't know, $4,000 or something like that. And but there's no way you're gonna convince someone to give you $1 million if you can't go and be in the same room with them and have a meeting. So the good thing about the conferences is that they give you, but I'm sure many people in the audience have at least gone to, Africa Tech Week or something. So they give you a chance to schedule meetings with the people who you're interested in with. So those people can either say yes or no. And in the end, you can always bump into them, like in one of the social things in the conference. And if you do it right, then you're gonna be able to meet people and your name is gonna be out there. So that's like a shorter route, but it involves putting in money. But I would actually also recommend it, because even in the law firm I would work in, one of the partners who I was working with would also unfailingly go for the intellectual intellectual property law conference. As in, it's an international conference and it's also not cheap, but he would go for it unfailingly. And after that, we would get a stream of emails. Of course, some were just forum shopping, but some would be business. And what's important is that your name is out there. Another way of getting into the room with these people is what I had said before. You see, I met this venture capitalist by going to the University of Illinois. That's a long route. So probably if you're younger, it's more viable than if you're older. Okay, but I mean, there's really no, but I'm guessing, okay, not let me say not older, but maybe if you have responsibilities, but you can always work around this, because if you could find a scholarship or something to get into one of the best MBAs or something like that, then, because the thing is, there's so much training and exposure that happens in those business schools that we don't get. Once you go there, it's life changing, honestly. Because I even know of a Kenyan, a very famous, okay, not famous here, but he's very well established venture capitalist. He's a Kenyan.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I see, the start of his career was that he went and did an MBA. Okay, also his credentials were on point. So okay, even though we encourage people to start where you are, start with what you are, start with what you can, but he's a doctor. First of all, he's a doctor of pharmacy, I think. Then he did an MBA. So it's not see, I mean, not everyone can be Steve Jobs and I don't know, Mark Zuckerberg.
And it is okay.
You have to know your stuff. And the thing
Exactly.
is, yeah, and with this color of skin, you have to prove, it's unfortunate, but you have to prove a whole lot more. Yeah. Your English has to
Explain
be on
that. This
point.
color of skin. What do you mean exactly?
This color of skin, black, because we have a bad reputation out there. I mean, between us and in fact, I will not even say Nigerians first. I'll say us, yeah. Because us, we are becoming just, we're just becoming con artists. There was a young lady who wanted to come to Kenya, for a UN internship. Do you know she was looking for accommodation online and she got conned, and she figured she just didn't come. She was like, how can I get conned of money from Kenyans and I've not even come to Kenya? You get. So there's the whole con artist thing to shake off. There's the whole negative publicity in the media, in the international media, which I don't excuse them for, by the way, because I've also lived in Italy, and I'm telling you, you'd never see black people in the media or anywhere except when you see this hungry, emaciated child from Turkana or somewhere in the, in a war zone, something like that. So there's a very negative perception about Black people. And I mean, there's the whole racism thing. And it's not everyone, because like sometimes for me, like some of the people who helped me out most were Caucasians, but you can't just wing it. Let me just not lie to you.
You
You
earn
can't
it.
wing
You
it.
have to earn it,
You
actually.
your credentials have to go before you. You're not gonna wing it. Because if maybe you have 5 generations of wealth, and all your antecedents went to Harvard, you can wing it. But if you, the child of a herdsman, you cannot wing it. So basically that, yeah. So I guess help me to organize my thoughts. But yeah, so try to be very professional, and then be in the same room with people. So you have to know your staff. Your staff has to be solid. Then find a way of bringing that staff to the people who are going to give you money.
Wow, interesting. So, how exactly would you define a venture capitalist? If I wanted to be one, where do I start? And noting the color of my skin, as you put it, and the circumstances within my country itself. If I wanted, where do I start? If that's an angle I wanted to pursue.
That's very interesting. But you have to have some form of money, yeah. But if it's your hustle, it's your hustle. Because, well,
Mm.
I can only tell you from my experience, like the people who I know. Okay, there are different kinds of venture capital. I mean, there are different sources of wealth. Let me put it that way, yeah. Because there are some
Mm.
people, as I said, they have 5 generations of wealth. Like if their
Mm.
father was Rockefeller, or not their father, yani their forefather was Rockefeller. That
Mm.
money is still swimming somewhere around. And there are many families like that in the US. Like they have third generation wealth, second generation wealth. Yeah. So all you have to do is now you've inherited $1 billion. So you have to figure out what to do with it. That's so you hire someone, and normally those ones are the family offices. You hire someone whose work, and probably it's an investment analyst or a financial analyst or a venture capital analyst, whatever they're called, whose job is basically to look at the best combination of investments to grow this to keep and grow this investment of yours. So that's one way. Then there's the other way of, if you're passionate about entrepreneurship and investment, then you you convince people. You look for ideas, which even I have been meaning to look for, but I haven't really gotten into the same room with people who have. Okay, I've had a couple of meetings with people who are startups and entrepreneurs, but nothing like a flow, like a pipeline of people. So what you need to do is you need to find people who are actually innovating. You have to find people who are innovating, and then okay, well, this is my advice, not as a venture capital analyst, but from financial wisdom. Have you read The Richest Man in Babylon? Like, try to be a venture capitalist in something you know, as opposed to something you don't know. So if you know agriculture very well, probably look for venture capital opportunities in agriculture, because then you can test the concept, because you want to find winners. So what you need to do, like your area of expertise, you go and you look for people who you think this idea can work, but I need money. So then after you found, so basically what you're going to do is you're going to be a bridge between the people who have the money. So you also have to find the people who have the money. So you have to be credible to both sides, the people who have the money and the people who need the money. And then and you put in a bit of your own. So it's rare that a venture capitalist has 100% of their own money, but they put in a bit of their own. They say we're coming in with 25% or 5%, whatever, and then they help these other people, the startups now, come up to speed, and also they help market the idea to now the venture capital and the venture capitalists. And basically that's how I'd see you go about it. So it probably needs a lot of networking. It needs for you to be savvy, to know where to find these people who are innovating, because there's really no, well, there's some forums here and there. There are forums here and there. I've met people. Let me not say I've not met people. I've met people who are in venture capital and all those things. I've met many. I've met many, but you have to be persistent about it so that you can get, like, for example, what is it called? I have not seen something that's compelling enough for me to think, instead of treasury bonds, I'm gonna put my money in this thing and see how it goes. I haven't seen that, but
Hmm.
I probably need to look a bit better.
So good. It's actually good that you've said that. What would be compelling for you?
What would be compelling? Um,
Because I'm
for
an
me,
entrepreneur, I would like to know how to get your attention. So how exactly do I do that?
I have to see something that's an idea that is prime, like, is not only an idea. Okay, I'm gonna borrow from what we used to learn in IP. That's intellectual
Mhm.
property law. Like, for like intellectual property law doesn't just protect ideas; it protects concrete expressions of ideas. So that idea of yours, which is good, it needs to have been expressed somewhere. That's what. So, and it needs to. For me, it needs. I would want the comfort that this person is like either world standard or has enough passion for them, and passion in the sense of grit. Sorry, I'm being cryptic. Passion in the sense of ability to stay with the thing that they have identified over time and put in the hours they need. Yeah. And of course, genuine expertise. For me, that would be compelling for me. Something really new. Okay, like what we used to talk about all the time when I would listen to pitch decks, like, or pitches from on entrepreneurs with my former boss, was that it has to be something totally new, like, even if it's easily replicable, it's something totally new, so that you have the first mover advantage. For me, that would be a winner. Like, it's just totally new, so then I have the first mover advantage. Or if it's not totally new, it's something not easily replicable, so that, even if it's replicable, I mean, if it's not easily replicable, so you're the only one in that space. That's not very easy to come up with. So in tech, I would say in tech, um, try to come up with something that no one. Okay, well, that's innovation basically. But sometimes we regurgitate ideas and we think they are new. I don't know how to put it. Um,
Very well said.
that's that's that's
And,
that's harsh, eh? But
no, no,
anyway.
no. It's the truth. It's the Kenyan style. That's why there are five M-Pesa shops next to each other, which doesn't. I mean, it shows some sense of innovation and pride in what we do, but still does not show ingenuity. You know. So I
Yeah.
hear you. I hear you loud and clear. Good. You've mentioned something I wanted to actually ask. Actually asked by a gentleman called Francis on LinkedIn. Francis, thank you for joining us. How exactly do you? What type of pitch deck would get your attention? If I wrote a pitch deck, what is the order? How should it look like? How many pages? What would you like to see in a pitch deck that I sent to you? That's his question.
Okay, great. I like that question. Thank you so much for the question. So, first of all, pitch decks should be short. Because imagine, venture capitalists have like 1,000 people clamoring for their attention, or they have
Mhm,
100 people clamoring for their attention, and they have many things to do. So
mhm,
they have exactly 10 minutes for you, or 5 minutes. So you can't be over there with 100-page academic thesis on why your thing will work. It needs to be something short and sweet, probably, I would say 10 slides. And then everything else can be in the annexes, or can be, if you need more information, you can go to the back of the pitch deck, or to other documents that are linked, something like that. And then the graphics need to be on point, and it should not be text heavy. It should not be text heavy at all. The graphics need to be on point. So you should show more than tell. I think it's like, just like any good story, you should show more than tell. Yeah. Like, if you're saying, I remember, there was one slide, because I helped in making the pitch deck for the startup that I worked in, the venture capital firm. And there was one slide which was comparing. the mortality rates or morbidity rates between Black people between the different people in populations in Chicago, like the
Different
Black people
races.
in, sorry, the different races, exactly, the different races. Thank you. I'm trying to be politically correct. No, I'm trying. I'm thinking, wow, this is on the internet, so I should try to be politically
Oh, no,
correct.
no, 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 my
Something
friend.
that I'm
The
not very
finance
used
bill
to.
is out, so no politically correctness.
Yeah, so basically it would say things like you know 40% more. Okay, this is not an accurate figure because I haven't looked at the pitch deck of late, but like 40% more African Americans die of heart disease than white people. Or so it has to be that graphic. It has to have it. Then you have to have your facts and figures on point with the latest research. So a pitch deck is short, but the research that goes on behind it is very, very extensive. Like, and then there's a standard format of pitch decks. How would I put this? Like the first page, there's always that. Well, of course, I wouldn't say it exactly, but look at any pitch deck. I'm sure if you Google, you'll find any pitch deck. So the first page is always like there's always a page for the team, and the team has to have photos and really nice photos, not those ones of umestuliwa. Okay, sorry, that's like Swahili. Like you're shocked, or it's your passport photo, the really bad one. Try and get a nice. And okay, it's funny. Like Americans have gone all out on this. Like there are people who are like 60, and you look at their photos on LinkedIn.
Mm.
It's so young. I'm like, no, this is deception. Okay, so I'm not encouraging people to like misrepresent and catfish people on their pitch decks,
Mm.
but
Mm.
put your best foot forward. Go to a studio, or at least you know use a good photo. Just use a good photo, and then yeah. So there's one that has to be about the team, and one has to be about the competitive landscape. Like you've done your research, and then also there's one where it shows how you're going to scale and in what time period. So you have to show that you've done your analysis, and in the first year you're gonna, or maybe in the second, third year you're gonna break even, and the fourth, fifth year you're gonna scale. So there are actually, then you have to do your ask, like what it is that you need, what is it that you need, what it is that you need, what is it that you need. Okay, yeah. So
Your
so
call to
basically, I've given
action.
you a rough sketch of some of those things. The team is very important. The competitive analysis, your ask, how you're gonna scale, like your business model. How is this actually working? It's not just the idea. How is it? And what have you done so far? Yeah, and that's important. In fact, they say in venture capital, they never fund people who have 0 shillings. That's very little credibility, or $0. You have to show us that, me, I'm a stranger. You want me to put $500,000 into your venture capital, your startup.
Mm.
But your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, all your friends have refused to put money into your thing. How is this a good idea? It's not a good idea. Yeah. So they say that before you get to venture capital, you have to bootstrap. But that's also another topic.
For another day, definitely. Wow, and time seems to be running out pretty fast. But let me ask a question from this is Florence. She's asking, what are the different types of venture capital investors in Africa?
Okay, so there are many types of venture capital. For example, you could have crowdfunding, you could have angel investors, you could have investment firms, like the typical, Goldman Sachs kind of investment. What do they say? Investment banks, who would want to do a bit of their investment in venture capital. You would have the typical now venture capital firms. All those, I've looked at those figures and the people who I see like the biggest players in Africa, and surprisingly I thought being Harambe people, okay, Harambe, or what is it called, but that's a very Kenyan thing actually, because Nigerians don't ascribe to that one, the one of changa changa, like everyone contributes a little bit.
Mm.
So I thought crowdfunding would be big in Africa, but crowdfunding is not that big. It's actually firms. It's venture capital firms, not even the investment firms, not investment banks, the big ones. So it's mostly venture capital funds, firms, and those are the ones which are the most common. So I think a quick Google will show things like Y Combinator, but Y Combinator is like big everywhere, not just in Africa. And yeah, a couple of others. So I would say those are the big ones. And then, of course, there's the impact investment, because there's a lot of impact to be made in Africa, I guess. And so those are also some of the investors that you could look to. So I don't know if the question had a follow up, or it was just what are the
N- No, no, no.
main
They were just asking about the types
the
of,
types.
yeah. So that I guess would work for now.
Okay.
Let me get another question from somebody else. What are the parameters? What's the law for a venture capitalist in Kenya, for example? If I wanted to open a venture capital firm, what manner of law do I need to subscribe to?
I think if you want to open a venture capital firm, you have to look into investment firms, because venture capital is a subset of investment, basically.
Mhm.
And so I would say you're safe as long as you're not asking for money from the public. Like when it becomes now a
Uh,
public thing, like, okay, how do I say the public? Like in a public offer, like, it becomes generalized to people who you don't know and all that stuff. You'd have to, and if you want it to be listed and things like those, like, it shouldn't be a public offer. Meaning, like, yeah, exactly. I think I've explained it. Like, it shouldn't be, what, like Uchumi did, a public offer. You just sell your
yep,
share to
yep.
the
An
public.
IPO of a sort.
Exactly, an IPO. It shouldn't be those big things, but if it's a small one, you probably have to comply with the regulations within investment itself. And I would say investment. So probably think of Akinada and Blair and stuff. You'd have to, yeah, dealing with people's money. Probably central bank would have a say in it, because imagine digital lenders thought
Mhm.
central bank had nothing to say about them, but it did have something to say about them. Yeah.
Mhm.
So probably the central bank, CMA, those are the people I would look to, who would probably be your regulators. But right now, I think it's not at a very specific. You'd probably have a company, so you'd have to comply with company law, you know.
What type of company, if I may ask? Is it partnership, sole proprietorship,
You
trust?
know,
What is it? What type?
in the US, venture capital firms are normally LLCs, which is not exactly an incorporated company. An LLC is kind of a hybrid. It's not exactly the company in Kenya, so there is really no equivalent. But I would say that, so you'd probably want to either be a partnership or a company. But now that's a choice that you'd have to make. Like, do you want to be a company?
Mm.
There are pros and cons of being a company.
And by
There's
company, is that a limited by guarantee or limited company?
no, limited by shares, as
Or
opposed to
it has to
limited
be
by
by
guarantee.
shares?
Because mostly companies limited by guarantee, I think they're normally restricted to the NGO world.
Hmm.
Not necessarily, but that's the most practical use for it. Because if you're thinking of being a venture capitalist, that's a business. How are you going to now? How are you, it's complex to, like, how are you going to let more people in if you want more people to come in, if it's a company limited by guarantee. And then what is the capital that you're going to use if it's a company limited by guarantee, you get. So the most common business
Mm.
vehicle for for businesses in Kenya is either the limited liability company, limited by shares. I'm also seeing the LLP, that's the limited liability partnership, becoming pretty common, because it has both advantages of companies and partnerships. The advantages of companies in that liability is limited, and the advantage of partnerships in the sense that you're not double taxation, which is a big issue now, but you're not taxed twice, because in companies you're kind of taxed, not kind of, you're taxed twice. You're taxed on your dividends, and then you're taxed on your income. So in the end, if you're the same person earning the income and earning the dividends, you're taxed twice.
Hmm. Interesting. Thank you for telling us that. Uh-huh.
Yeah, free legal advice
I
right there. Take it home.
we appreciate. Helen is asking, what are the key challenges you have faced in either raising venture capital for your own startup or other startup?
Okay. I don't have my own startup. I have friends who have startups, but I don't have my own startup. But I have helped
Mm.
raise money for startups, not in
Mm.
Kenya, but in other countries. on, okay, well, in the US basically. And what I would say is a big
Before you
challenge.
continue, why not in Kenya?
Why not in Kenya? Because remember,
Hatujatosha mboga ama nini?
no. It's because professionally I'm trained as a lawyer, yeah, and
Mhm.
um, so for me to become a venture capitalist in Kenya, I have to pivot, which is a good
Mm.
consideration, but I have not gotten there yet. So, and also remember that I was working remotely for a Chicago firm. So basically, I was working in Kenya, but for the activities of the firm, which were in Chicago. And so, what I saw as challenges were that, I mean, in the end, venture capital startups are thinly resourced. How would I say? Like you're not like a big entity in Kenya or even in the US where you have a person who makes sure we comply with all the laws. Then you have someone who balances the books. Then you have someone who you're it. It's your three of you and you're it. You have to do everything. So it's just like any SME in that sense. So that's a challenge because you have to divide. You have to be super organized and you have to divide your time, and sometimes things can drop in the sense that you don't have the power of ubiquity or whatever it's called, like you can't be in two places at the same time. So that's a challenge.
Omnipresence.
And yeah, or omnipresence also, that you can't be in two places at the same time. And then another challenge is getting in the same room. Imagine it's a challenge. If it's a challenge for people in the US, I wonder how much more it's a challenge for people in Kenya. It is for people in Kenya
Mhm.
because, and this is one thing I'd like to say before this program ends. It's that all those things about getting into the same room with people, it's about trust. So if we forget everything in this program and forget everything that I've said, please remember that it's really about trust. People give money to people they trust. If you look credible, then they're gonna not only look, if you are credible, then you're gonna be trustworthy. But you have to create that channel where you can get through to them. And that means, and I think even when he got the first time we spoke, this is what I said. It's not, no one, you're not entitled. Sometimes we feel entitled because we were colonized and therefore they owe us. No one owes you anything. Yeah. So it's not for them to struggle to understand the language you're speaking. And I don't mean English or Kiswahili. I'm meaning like
Mm.
cultural norms, how you express yourself, what is acceptable and what is not. It's not up to them
Mm.
to bend over backwards to figure out what you're about. It's up to you to figure out how they understand things and package yourself and package your goods in a way that enables them to understand your message. So that's what I would say. That's the challenge. The challenge is creating trust, and trust is
And
created through networks. Okay, I've stopped.
no, good, good. I like that. Actually, my follow-up question into that is, by them, you mean any investor? Because it doesn't have to be a European, a Caucasian. It might be your next door neighbor, right?
Yes. It has to. It
Good.
can be your next door. In fact, probably those are the people. Your next door
You need to.
neighbor will probably be more important than. I mean, if that what I said, like credibility. If you have credibility in your community, then a venture capitalist will trust you more. Yeah. So it's any investor,
Brilliant.
but you just remember it's the trust element. Like you have to show them why they should buy into this.
Good. I see a question from Brian Muridin Derito. He asks, how big is impact investing as a sector? That's part one, or is it a sector specific? E.g., if we talk about climate and disability, for example.
Well, I don't have the figures, so I don't want to lie to you and tell you, oh, impact investing forms 53%. Okay, I don't have the figures for how big impact investing is, but it's not
Mm.
only specific to okay, well, you said climate and disability. I would put it as a wider thing. Yeah. There are people who are passionate. The thing about investors, you have to realize that investors sometimes invest in things they're passionate about, and sometimes someone says like, when I was growing up, we were living in the south side and we had no access to schools, and therefore my passion is education, and therefore he starts impact investing, with a leaning towards education. And sometimes someone could say, so I don't think, of course, if you do your research into which, you'll see which, or what I would say is this: you, whenever you're looking for funds, whether it's impact or not, and this applies to most venture capital firms, they have a bias, not a bias in a bad way, they have a leaning, let's say a leaning, like they have things they'll invest in, or like concentrations. There are things that they will invest in, and things they will not invest in. Even when you look at pharmaceutical companies, there are pharmaceutical companies that will invest in dermatology, others will invest in cancer treatments, others will invest. So even in impact, there are some who will invest in yeah, there are people who are actually passionate about investing in, let's say, people of color, investing in education, investing in healthcare. So it's up to you to figure out from all the research that you can do what this person is interested in. I think that's the best answer I can give to you. Like, figure out what those people are interested in and try to not waste your time. Okay, this sounds also bad, but don't waste your time like doing cold calls and blanket applications to everyone just because you Googled and these are the top 50 investors. Try to be targeted. Targeted pitches go further than just wholesale or generic pitches.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Before we end, as we are getting closer to ending, we have 4 minutes to go. Brian, I may answer you with some data that I have. Impact investing in Africa is actually a growing sector. So honestly, it hasn't been there for long, but it's actually a growing sector with estimated assets under management. We call it in investment AUM of over 50 billion US dollars as of 2023. So this represents a significant increase, definitely, from just I think in 2010 we were at around 10 billion US dollars. And the growth of impact investing has been driven by various factors, COVID being one of them, honestly. But there's also been a strong economic growth in the continent, a young and growing population, which is actually labor, which makes up or the three factors of business success, actually, and an increasing focus on sustainable development, which is also a question I'll ask you, Elsie. The sectors that have actually made sense so far and that most impact investors have sought to enter in, being even the likes of Dangote, Moamin, and the likes. So I'm even mentioning African impact investors would be agriculture. I've seen that a lot because of food security. And it actually accounts for 20% of impact investments in Africa. Financial services. These are fintechs and the likes. It's been quite the catch. Healthcare also because of the problems that are involved within the sector, and the last would be energy because also of the needed demand for energy. So yeah, it's still relatively a young sector in Africa, and there's space for people like Elsie to venture into and give us their salary here and there. um, but that said, Elsie, I would like to ask. So, thinking about venture funding in Africa and even funding by itself in Africa, how do you think it aligns to the SDGs, and what do you think are the important concepts or perspectives around the SDGs in Africa and Kenya as a whole?
Okay, so basically, I think the SDGs would really tie in mostly with impact investment, because then impact investment is always trying to solve a social problem. And I would say things like in education, like literacy levels and all that. Um, yeah, so I would say probably in that sense that impact investment is probably what would be most aligned to the SDGs. And yeah, I would leave it at that.
And do you think even by itself are the SDGs relevant to Africa?
Ac- Actually, that's why I was having a bit of a problem because I'm not very sold on the idea of the SDGs,
It's okay.
because
It's your opinion. So I mean,
because I just okay, my personal view is that the UN is not really run by Africa. It's not really run by Kenyans. It's not really run by us. So it's very hard. Okay, it's true. We have all these. I feel like the people, even IMF, the Bretton Woods. So I'll just be controversial. The Bretton Woods institutions, okay, yeah, because it's a whole situation, I think, out there, yeah. And I think I'm with Dambi Samoyo on this, in the sense that you tell us where we need to develop, then you give us loans, then the loans we can't repay them, then now we need more loans, then so it becomes like a cyclical thing. And then also, even from a personal perspective, I find that sometimes the things like SDGs and all this like international development, they they there's a disadvantage to
disadvantaged.
people who just want to work and
Mhm.
be productive citizens of their countries. Because I would say that, like, when my friends and I were looking for scholarships to go abroad, we could only find scholarships in climate change, in gender studies, in development studies, and we're like, okay, if all now you see, if all those are the scholarships, what would happen if everyone in Kenya became a gender expert and a development expert? Do you think we would really build roads? And so that's my view. I won't belabor it. So I don't really concentrate on the SDGs. I just feel like Kenyans, we should just work hard and work smart and do what we're doing. As in, we would be able to get where we are if we were more honest, obviously, and if we were more diligent.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to an end of our session today, this evening, with exactly 2 minutes past the hour. This is Let's Create Africa, where we talk about business innovation, governance, and the SDGs. Today we had the lovely Elsie Oyoo, and very much talented and skilled and experienced advocate and certified secretary, Elsie Oyoo. Elsie, how can guys reach out to you if they needed to get more information from you?
Okay, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn, Elsie Oyoo. I'm on LinkedIn. And then, I'm just wondering what your audience size is, because I can give out my number and then everyone will be like hitting up my number.
I would advise you not
But
to give your number.
yes, so probably you can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
And there, I'm very responsive on LinkedIn. I don't have too many social media apps on my phone, but LinkedIn is one of them. So I'll definitely get back to you, and we could start an interesting conversation. As I said, I'm also looking to see. I'm looking to see also. Okay, Twitter, but Twitter, I think I'm not that active. LinkedIn, so just yeah, LinkedIn would be a good way.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. This is Let's Create Africa, the webinar. And I would like just to give thanks again to KYR Africa, the Future of Work, Statinev, and Let's Create Africa, the Entrepreneur Support Organization. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We are happy to actually be doing this again. And thank you for making this lovely enough for it to be meaningful, the questions and all. I see there's a quick one. I don't know how to ask it, but he asks, SDGs and the ESGs are just greenwashing tools. It's actually an opinion from
He agrees with me.
from Deritu. So that's his opinion, and I would definitely like to mention it because it's his opinion. But thank you so much. I would like to close this up. Thank you, team. Thank you, audience. Thank you, everybody, for making this worth it. Elsie, thank you so much for giving us time. And please, let us continue this. Even as we continue, I'll be looking forward to continue this conversation with you even after this session. Thank you so much, Elsie. And without further ado, we are closing. Have a good evening and God bless you all. Thank you.